presentation, but we thought that a better use of this small time block would be to kind of see if anyone in here had particular questions as it pertained to nonprofits, and we could get right to the meat of everything. However, if you do not, we can just go ahead with our presentation. But we'll first start with introductions. My name is Sherin Dawud.
I'm Raina, Vallot.
Raina and I are the co-founders of Power Pump Girls. Power Pump Girls is a social impact club, and we empower women to connect and serve. So basically what that means is we throw really fun parties, bring women together, and then provide volunteer opportunities for them to serve together. Should we talk about programs real quick?
We can, but Jason, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, ladies. My name is Jason Hughes. I am the founder of Project 70805. It's a local nonprofit that I founded in 2016 in the area where I grew up at, and I also have a lot of real estate, and several of my businesses also reside in this area. So it's really important for me to have a hands-on approach to the footprint, the development, and hopefully, just working with partnerships and other local government associations to get things going in my area has been probably like my day-to-day thing that I do now, among other things. But working with these ladies, they're friends of mine, as well as I'm their client. What am I to y'all? Client?
Yeah. So a little background on like our relationship. We each own for-profit companies and have founded nonprofit companies. Right. So that's a unique position as entrepreneurs here in Baton Rouge. So that's where we kind of share that experience. And so we've worked together on both our for-profit and nonprofit sides in several capacities. So at the moment, Jason is a client of ours for our for-profit company, but our nonprofit.
Yeah, between 8 and 5, I'm a client. After 501, I'm a friend. So
there you go.
It works.
So the gist of our conversation today is talking about the difference between for-profit and nonprofit entities. They're both businesses that someone has to start and found and run. But we're here to answer any questions specific to what it takes to start, run, and grow a nonprofit. And we can give insight onto both sides of that because we run both for-profit and nonprofit companies.
So before we start, does anyone have any specific questions? Is anyone in here interested in beginning or founding a nonprofit?
Yeah.
Just one.
All right.
Okay, so then we'll just go with our presentation. And then if you guys have questions, feel free. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, cool.
Okay, so we did the intros. This is the cost behind the cause. And so basically what is a nonprofit? So the difference is that it's an entity that's based on doing good for the community. It's founded to serve in some capacity, whereas a typical business is started to make profit and to make money, right? So for us, in practice, that looks like community programming and starting things that address a need in our community. And so we can go into more about what Power Pump Girls does and how it was founded, but really what we do to serve and why the purpose behind the organization.
So essentially it was started as a for-profit entity. We were just a network of women that were coming together to hang out and to network across different sectors. However, as these women began to network with one another, they started to ask us for opportunities to volunteer and serve. But we were not set up for that specifically. So in 2018...
Yeah, we actually had started some nonprofit-like programming. And so at that point, a mentor of ours was like, you should just become a 501c3 organization so you can get grant funds and programming and kind of structure in the way that you're already operating. And so it was in 2018 that we went and filed with the IRS to be tax exempt as a 501c3 organization. And so our methods in which we were bringing in money didn't really change that much, but we were now able to go out and access other funds that were set aside for nonprofits, I guess.
Yeah, so kind of a similar situation for me on my journey. I was a business owner first and foremost, and then just recognized the need in the community to do different and give back. And so the first year in business, we did really well, and we started to give back. And kind of like similar to what they said, people approached me and was like, hey, you should start a nonprofit. You can receive more funding for what you're doing. A lot of the stuff was just literally out of pocket for me. And not even to look at it from a tax benefit standpoint, but just on the sense that, I had a company, the community supported that company. So I felt that it was important to turn around and support the community. But from my point of view, it's the same thing. It's like I was very ignorant to what a nonprofit actually was, and the mission behind what I was doing. I was actually functioning as a nonprofit, but not really a nonprofit. And so a lot of people that ask the question about like starting a nonprofit for the young lady in the front, and it's the same thing. It's like, my question was, is there a nonprofit that exists that is carrying out what I want to see? Because it might serve me better to actually pour resources into that nonprofit versus actually starting my own. Because it was the same way, again, with the nonprofit. I mean, with the for-profit point of view, my mindset was always for-profit. It was never on nonprofit, which still is a for-profit company, and it depends on who you ask. But same thing. It's just like I can speak to what they were saying because, again, my nonprofit derived or grew from a for-profit company.
And just to speak on our programming a little bit too, Jason, because you said something about, was there an organization already doing this? At the time for us, Power Pump Girls was similar to some other organizations in the social impact club aspect, but the programming we specifically developed for period equity and women's empowerment, that wasn't so much something we were seeing, so we were unique in that way. And I think same for you.
Yeah.
There wasn't an organization doing exactly what you were planning to do.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it too is just centered around us. We started off like literally just philanthropy, just strictly give back, a few events, a few initiatives a year, and it just kind of spawned and grew into what it's in today. But yeah, same thing. It's just like, am I better suited with my time and my resources to pour into something else that's already started versus establishing what is virtually a new business? And that's what you have to learn. Nonprofit is literally starting a new business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions so far? We good?
None.
Okay.
Why are we quiet? So just by a show of hands, who in here has a nonprofit?
All right.
Okay.
So y'all know this.
I asked
There
the
we
wrong
go.
Question.
That's a better question,
I asked
right?
the wrong question.
That's a better question.
What
so,
are your nonprofits? Let's talk about that. What is the area of focus for each of your nonprofits?
Exactly. We believe in open dialogue, so we want to include you guys. We don't want to just sit up here and just spew out information. We want you guys to interact with us too. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Take that. So you said the key word fundraiser. Funds is it the root word? How does it? Fund.
Funds.
Yeah, that's the word. Fund, money, green, coins. And so the thing about it is that, the signs of a good nonprofit is a great funding source. And identifying those funding sources, whether they be grants, whether they be private donations, so forth, or fundraisers, like you said. The thing that, I used to struggle with is that I didn't know how to ask for help. That was a big thing for me to humbly ask a friend or a family member to support my mission in wanting to see a change in my community. But the best nonprofits in the world, they function on asking for help. Donate here, give this, give that. And the thing that you have to understand is that whatever mission that you guys have, you have to identify who could I talk to that is interested in funding this particular mission. And that's the situation. Fundraisers are good, but they can't be your sole source of revenue. You have to figure out a way that you can tell the story of your nonprofit to where it recollects and it attracts other people to say, well, you know what, you're giving scholarships to teens, I want to do the same thing. Here's $5,000 or whatever, But that's the thing that I had to figure out is how to ask for the help, and then figuring out and doing my research to say, like I said before, is there any other nonprofits that that give this or do this, because I can have conversations with them to understand what resources or networks that they're tapped into to receive that funding, right? So that's what my answer is like, funds is the key thing. And, having a good idea is only as good as what you can fund it,
I'm going to add to that really quick 2 things. The first thing is definitely to diversify your funding. It is very smart to have an annual fundraiser. We plan Jason's annual fundraiser, but that's only one income source. You have to have multiple, because in any business you have to have multiple, just to make sure that you can stay afloat. But in Baton Rouge, there's the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, and they put out a magazine every year. And in the magazine, it segments the donors and what they're giving to. So is it agriculture? Is it family? Is it health? Is it period poverty? And you can go in and see what these funders are donating to. And then also you can kind of try to figure out, does yours fall under more than one type of sector? Is it education and is it health? Is it education and it could be just scholarships? But you can go in and look at that as well, but then also finding comps that are at a national level and seeing what these national funders are giving. And so you can go in and say, okay, this organization in Texas is just like mine. Kellogg's is sponsoring them. Let me reach out to see if they'll sponsor too.
Right.
Go ahead. I would just say, lastly, similar to a for-profit company, your network is your net worth. And so, to Jason's point, not being afraid to ask, but also just getting out there and letting people know what you're doing. The more they know about you, the more ways in their mind they're connecting how I can get people resources to you or financial resources to you to help you continue the work. But you have to continuously be in the face of people and talking about what you have going on for them to even know it's an opportunity to give. It's less transactional than a for-profit. They're not really getting anything directly in return, but they are part of a bigger mission, and that's doing good for the community. And so just making sure that that's well known will get you the funding and the growth opportunity that you're looking for.
But it's also not being afraid to partner with somebody who also has the same mission too. Because if I'm a nonprofit and I'm well established and I have the network where I can raise the money, I still would look for other partners and other nonprofits that still fulfill the same mission, which means it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it type situation. I'm not going to go out there and try to reinvent a program that I can pour into financially or fund your particular idea. It's just that, like she said, you have to have that known. And, again, we always have like a lot of good ideas for programming, but you have to also focus on, like we focused on one, and then one turned into two, then two turns into four. So if you just focus on one particular style of programming and really hit home on where those people who give to that particular thing live, work, breathe, what kind of money they have, as far as the ability to fund that, then that's where I would start.
And then you really need to know the ins and outs of your costs as well, because it's one thing to go out there and say, oh, I need $100,000 to fund this program, and then the grantor comes back to you and it's like, can you send me your program budget? And you can't show anywhere on your program budget how you're going to spend this $100,000. And then another thing about that is they don't want to be the sole person covering the $100,000. Exactly. They want to know that you have other partners in this fight with them, and they want to only do maybe 20,000, and you have another person that's doing 5 and 10 until you hit that 100. But you need to be able to say how you're spending that money as well. You can't just arbitrarily throw, a number out in the air and say this is what it cost.
Yep.
What are some of the other nonprofits that are in the audience?
Yeah, we saw a couple of hands.
Yeah.
Kay, what's your last name? I know you have a last. There you go. Okay, Rick. All right.
When we were in the shelter, that was something they always placed everybody in low income housing, and that's high crime, and we're coming out of such a destitute situation already. And so that was where I seen the need. And so I would say for me, in this season, I have been scared to fundraise. In this year, I have a date that I'm aiming for. October is domestic violence awareness month, so I got a little time. and I am a little weary about the how, because I need people who have a passion for what I do. I just don't know how to, because I have placeholders right now, like my family. They
I'd
aren't,
love to talk about that for a
they
second.
aren't into
Let them go.
philanthropy like me.
They gotta go by.
Yeah, they gotta go by.
So,
Yeah, don't ever involve your family in it
and
if you can help it.
I have a for-profit. That's how I get my. That's how a lot of people know what I'm doing. So a portion of my proceeds from my for-profit funds my nonprofit, but it's getting a little.
So what's your for-profit company?
My for-profit is Savior Botanicals. It's a plant-based home care line. I'm a chemist as well by trade, and so I use that to fund my foundation. That is why I even built that.
So have you identified any other local nonprofits that share the same mission?
Yes, I have.
The Butterfly Society?
Star.
Star, yeah.
Iris is an ascension. They don't really come out of their bubble. But I have made contact with those two. It's the board.
So let's
Right,
talk about
right.
the board. Does anyone
Board
else have
structure.
board challenges, or you're building a board, you're shifting a board?
Yeah, I just
Maybe
went through
no,
a total.
kind of.
I'll
Yeah.
wait, but I just went through a total revamp of my board.
Same. So Power Pump Girls has been a nonprofit since 2018. In 2018, we had a solid board in terms of diversity. Like, everyone had a different industry and profession. Some had board experience, some didn't. But it probably wasn't our strongest board in terms of fundraising and brand recognition. They were very internal and helping us to try to figure out what this organization was, but they weren't as outward facing and promotional with the org as we would have liked. So we now have a new board that we were very particular about who we chose. In that, we wanted them to be fundraisers at their core. We wanted them to go out and talk about our programs, talk to people who had access to capital or resources that could fund our programs. And so that's essential, because although as a founder, as an executive director, you're running this organization, you need hands, feet, legs, mouths in the community that are talking about the work you're doing to be able to continue the work you're doing and grow it. And so your board is like the most crucial piece in terms of that growth trajectory and the sustainability of your company. And so, as the same as a for-profit, you need to bring in funds, you need to give things out in return for those funds, but the board is like the crux of how you get that done. And it's really important to funders to see who's on your board and if they have, credibility and things like that.
And then a lot of your grants are also looking for 100% give-get. So they are looking to see that your board is just as invested in your mission and vision as you are. So what
With
we
their
did,
dollars.
yeah, with their money. So what we did when we first started our new board is we allocated a dollar amount per seat that we had for our board. So if you wanted to sit on our board, this was the amount that you had to fundraise to be a part of it. Because we have items that we need to purchase. We have administrative fees. And what you'll soon find when you're following up with these grants is they don't like to give money for administrative costs.
Right.
They only want to do programming. So we were like, if you want to sit in this seat, this is how much it costs. And eventually we'll get to a place like a colleague of ours in New Orleans where it's $50,000 to sit on his board. And so he has 11 board members. So he's covering a couple of salaries, with the seats that he has on his board. And it does seem a little scary to ask people that.
Like audacious.
Yeah, it seems audacious, but when people are coming to a board, most people know that it comes with a cost. It comes with, you need to be able to fundraise.
Commitment.
And it doesn't have to come from them specifically. If it's $500, they can pay the $500 up front, they can pay it monthly, they can
Or they
go
can go and find
fundraise
it.
and
Right.
find it from another person, but that's what they're responsible for, to have a seat at your table.
Yeah, I speak to that too. We don't have a dollar amount
Yet.
requirement yet. You're right, I like the word yet. But what I had to do is when I first started my board, it was literally two of my best friends, right? And they just happened to be, decently influential in politics and entrepreneurship here in town. So it kind of worked. When I would mention that they were on my board, I got a little validity, started getting a little traction. But most recently, in January, I reshaped the whole entire board because I had to look at it as a partnership. And with any partnership, if you're building a house, you would want a plumber, an electrician, a HVAC, a floor guy, a carpenter on your board to build this house. That's the best way I can simplify it.
analogy.
Thank you, I know. I practiced that in the car on the way over here. No, I'm lying. That just came to my head just now. But it's the truth, though, right? Because the way I look at it is just a partnership, right? So what do I have my mom on my board for if she can't bring any value or any commitment into building
real.
this house, right? And that's how you have to look at to it. And then strategically, it's like chess. You know, if you're into the domestic violence situation, you know, you probably want somebody on your board that has maybe had directly or indirect experience with that particular cause. That's important because you're going to be trying to, as the executive director or whatever your title is, you're going to be trying to convince your board that this is a great thing to do. And it's hard to convince people that it's a great, because they'll look past you and say, oh, she's a great person, but then what's her experience, right? Or I believe in your cause, but can you show me a track record, right? So then you look at the way things are set up, it's all about structure. And it's just the same thing with nonprofit. Your structure is going to be your foundation on what you build on, and your board has to be able to not only support that foundation, but also pour into what you're trying to do. And like you said, the dollar amount commitment, it shows validity, and it also, you know, for lack of a better word, it gives you that skin in the game, right? So if you're invested your money or you're invested your time, like she said, it might not be a direct, they call me and say, hey, I want you to be on my board, I cut you a check. It might be like, well, no, I know somebody that is passionate about this, that has a few dollars, that might want to, you know, meet my requirement as a board member to be on this board. Because I serve on several boards as well around town, and I don't have any that have a dollar amount
Well,
commitment.
it's a best practice for larger organizations.
But this is true. This is true. And it's only
And you
because,
can scale it. Because
yes,
to her point, we can't come out the gate right now and say, board member, you have to cut a
Pay
check
it
for
right.
$50,000.
No, right.
But this particular person has scaled this organization over 10 years.
Yeah.
He has a
And they've
$5
grown
million operating
tremendously.
Right.
And from the beginning, he had that practice in place, but the dollar amount scaled, right? And
Correct.
so if you just get in the habit of setting up best practices, it grows with you as you grow your organization.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Any other ones that wanna?
Another?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. That's the for-profit? Okay. Okay. For-profit. Mm-hmm. 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 You wanna take it? Take it, girl.
Yeah. Challenges.
The challenge has never been a challenge for me until now. I just kind of feel like at this point, the nonprofit is 10 years, also just over 10 years old as All-Star. And I just decided that, you know what, it's time for me to stop spending all of my money and try to figure out how I can use this nonprofit and make it work for me in regards to the reason I put it in place.
Mm-hmm.
So that challenge is very common for a lot of organizations. We've had to self-fund. I'm sure Jason has self-funded some of his projects. But there is a time you want it to be sustained on its own. Something I think early on that we did that made asking a little bit easier was like building out a deck. It was just building out a 3 to 10 page deck that said who we are, what we do, where our money goes, why it's important, right? And we packaged that email up, we packaged that document up, and just is like, hey, you're in my network, this is what I'm doing, here's how you can help and get involved. Go through, read our deck, and then, of course, for every no, you feel a little bit defeated, right? But we heard something recently that was like, if you knew how many no's you were going to get before your yes, you would be racing to get through all of your no's. So, like, if you knew you were going to get 28 no's before you got a yes, you're trying to go hit 28 no's immediately so you can get to that yes. So you really have to, like, reprogram your mind and how you're thinking about that. Not everybody is going to give to your organization, of course, but we even were talking about this with Jason. Start, like, line iteming what your things are that you need, and then go with direct ask for people. You would be surprised how many people may be directly interested in helping a family for 3 months, right? If it's packaged like that and they see where their dollars go. But if you're just like blanketing, it's kind of hard for people to see how they fit into your vision.
Yeah, and I think the precursor to the ask, similar to for-profits, is marketing. And so I think subconsciously that was our strong suit. We were talking about Power Pump Girls. We branded our organization so well that to this day, if we walk outside, people call us the Power Pump Girls. That is not who we are. That's our organization. But we branded so well. We were in people's faces. We're on social media. We're in events. We're showing up. We're talking about it so much that when it came time for the ask, they're like, I know the Power Pump Girls here. I know somebody who can help you, or I know a grant that you should apply for. So the precursor to the ask, although the ask is important, is the brand recognition and making sure people know who you are and what you're doing. So that it's so commonplace. I've seen your logo. I've seen your program. I've seen your face. What do you have going on? And when do you need the money? I got you.
Right.
So it's really just being like a broken record and talking about what you have going on the same way you would with a for-profit. You have to make money, you have to sustain, but the presence and the branding and the awareness of what you have going on is just as important as where you're going to find the money.
Yeah, and, oh, go, sorry.
I branded my business in a way that I am not the face of my business. So everybody knows All Star. I can go anywhere and anybody can tell you about All Star, but you're saying that people see you and you're the face of your business. How would you go about marketing it when
Can I take this one?
Sure.
So Liz, that was the same thing that I struggled with. For those of you, I own a collision center here in town. It's Capital City Collision, 2540 Scenic Highway,
Shameless
Baton Rouge,
plug.
Louisiana,
Did you ever have
70805.
any body
So
issues?
no, but that was the thing. I never wanted to be the face of the company. It just kind of stuck with me. And then with social media, the way that works, people don't believe me, but I never was even interested in being on social media. I was more or less just worrying about fixing people's cars the right way. That's what I was focused on. The main thing that I heard from your interaction with talking with you guys, you have to be valid. And in order to be valid, people have to recognize you and be able to speak well about you. It's not really necessarily the actual face of the business as it is the brand that you're promoting. So if All Star what's the name of it? Okay, so All Star Community Care becomes a recognizable brand name, it doesn't matter who's the face behind it. It's the validity that's saying, like, I see that brand, I know it's good. If I see that brand, I want to do something about it. And so you, as the owner of that, you have to say, hey, am I well equipped as a person to interact and shake hands and be in people's face and tell them about All Star, or do I have to empower somebody else to come behind me and say, I want them to go? Because either way it goes, just sitting around Googling grants and looking for things is not going to get it.
It's a waste of your time almost.
Exactly, because nobody's going to be saying, like, what's your track record? And what's your history? Who have you worked with? Who have you partnered with? And so, to escape from having to be the face, you have to maybe spend some time thinking about how can I market my nonprofit through my for-profit, right? Because you said they kind of run hand in hand.
usually how it happens when
Yeah.
we have back to school events or whatever we're doing. It's usually the logos are there. So you typically know that there's a few people that have helped support whatever it is, but they are people that I know, like
Right.
somebody that I really know that have
But
So,
but look, hold on, wait, sorry.
okay.
Let's see. I know you got the microphone and stuff you want to do. So, but no, the reason why I'm saying it, because you remind me of me, and this is why I'm speaking to you. Because you have to also understand is that I heard you say that, some of the programs that you guys offer is back to school, but let's look around. There's several back to school. Exactly. So there's, right, so this, because I was in that trap too, right? There is literally, if you wait till the week before school start, y'all, we're going to have 10 back to schools. They always at the same time. I just never understood. We always have at the same time on the same weekend, and it's like a competition on who's going to have the most people there, right? The point I'm making is that you have to separate your for-profit company away from your nonprofit company and say, what's my nonprofit's mission going to be? Is it going to be to do back to schools? Because we know that if your for-profit company is successful enough to support this, you can cut a check to somebody who's doing a back to school and it's the same thing served. And then it's less on your plate to have to manage a back to school event if that's the mission of your nonprofit. So you have to say, what is my goal for my nonprofit? What mission do I want to fulfill in the community with my nonprofit? Because it's not back to school, I hope. Because if that's the case, you can just cut a check to a back to school and serve your purpose, right? You sleep good at night knowing that you serve some kids. You know, your accountant says, hey, you gave to a 501c3, congratulations. But at the end of the day, your mission for your nonprofit, if you're trying to revamp that, it needs to be around or centered around a mission, right, of what you want to do. And then that will direct you on who you should talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I know the question was directed at, so I'm gonna say something really quick, huh?
So these seats are something.
So,
Sorry.
first thing about your books, this is for profit or nonprofit. As a founder, a CEO, a COO, you should know your books in and out, every single penny. Right before we came here, we spent 3 hours reviewing our books for the quarter and what we're about to do for the next 3 months, right? So when it came to us asking who we wanted to be on our board, it didn't come from a place of, can I trust you? It came more from a place of, what is your skill set and what do you bring to this table? And then setting an expectation for yourself and for that seat. The trust, I think, to Jason's point, comes from the credibility of that person's name in the community and the work that they're attached and associated to. We didn't just go pick random people. We picked people that we knew were credible. We picked people that we knew were at the top of their game in their industry or at their jobs, mainly because Raina and I are overachievers, so we wanted to surround ourselves with overachievers and people who were doing a little bit better than us or smarter than us. And I didn't know if you wanted to.
I had something.
I know, can I say something
Yeah.
while you think about it?
Sure.
Also, too, and when you're vetting people to be on your board, you know, the first question that you should ask or the first piece of information that you should share with them is asking them what your mission means to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's going to tell you everything that you need to know right there, right? If they're doing
their
it because they're
intention.
your homegirl, or not homegirl, but if they're doing it because they're your girl, you know, your friend, are they doing it because they're a church member? Are they doing it because you know somebody that if you ask them to do it, they'll do it for you? That's not always the best fit, right? You have to find somebody that's going to be passionate about your mission, and then you have to find a way to creatively talk about your mission and be about the mission if that's what it is you want to be.
Yeah.
Kind of,
So for
sort of,
us, we
yeah,
did, We posted
kind
on
of, sort of.
social media, we're like, we're looking for board members.
I didn't go
Anyone
that far. Yeah, I didn't go that far, but what I did is like I just did it really old school. I just went and I had my mission up at the top of a whiteboard, and then I went through my contacts in my phone,
Yeah,
and I just went through and said, this might not be somebody that I know or talk to every day, but this is somebody that might be able to recommend me somebody, and I trust their judgment, and I trust their word that this person is solid. And then you just vet them. You know, it's like an interview process.
We did both. We went
Yeah.
through our contact list, and we're like, these are like our top people we want. These are people who maybe we want. These are some people we'll just ask. But then we also did like an ad on social media, like, we need board members. Here's kind of what we're looking for. And one of our strongest board members came from a recommendation from someone from social media. We did not know this person, and we're so glad we know this person now. She comes to our board meetings and gets us straight. So had it not been for that outreach and ask, we wouldn't have had her. But then we did just use our network. And then back to the trust thing, things that seem tedious, which we get annoyed with all the time, like bylaws and articles and your board agreement, like all the paperwork is annoying, but it's also for governance and structure, and that holds them accountable to being trustworthy to you. That is on paper, legal documents that say, I'm agreeing to be on this board to do this and this alone. And that's how you hold, if something goes different than that, you have that paperwork to fall back on. But it's not like you're just asking them to gather for the sake of, I need you on a board. This is a real job.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the job of a board too. It's really just to govern you. Like, make sure you're not commingling funds, making sure you're not living your mission, all of the things. You can sometimes get board members who come in and want it to be their board, and sometimes you've seen people lose control of their board, and now you're not even kind of like in the picture or in control. And so that was the biggest trust issue Raina and I had when it came to who can we put on our board. Do they see our vision, and do they trust us enough to go off and run and develop and build and create and serve? Or are these people going to come in and say, oh, I don't like how you're doing that, do it this way, and then put it up to a vote, and then now you're not even operationally running your programs.
Right.
So that's another good question, like when you're interviewing people to be on your board, is what he's saying, like, what is your intentions on joining this board?
Right.
Like, what is your background in? What are you passionate about? And that's honestly, I think, how you can mitigate it. You're not going to...
You also don't have to have 1 million people.
Correct.
We started with 5, went to 7, then 9, and now
Odd
we're back
numbers
to
only.
7. Always
Yeah.
an odd number.
Oh, yeah.
But again, we know boards of 20, 30 people. Some people have a board of 3. So as long as it feels good for where you are in the growth period you're in.
What your bylaws say.
Yeah, and your bylaws. There's always like a protection piece, and you use your discernment as a founder and a business owner, but
Yeah.
there's some safe holds you can develop there too.
But I think you'll be okay with it if you realize it, because at some point too, it's also the realization of having a conversation with somebody like us or anybody else. It's like, the nonprofit idea sounded good, but maybe it's, like I say, it's just best suited for me to support one that shares my
It's a
same
whole other
thing.
business. Like,
Yeah.
you're running 2 companies.
You're running another
Yeah.
company.
The reason I have it is because I do a lot of outreach.
Already.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you ask me before, but my clients that come in for counseling services, they have children that are low income or their families are low income. The needs are not met for whatever the reason is. So it just makes sense for us to have a nonprofit. However, the nonprofit is funded solely through the profit.
Yeah.
And I just have to figure out how to make this nonprofit work because I'm not gonna lie, I spend a lot of money and I'm tired.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's the set, but you have
Make
to
your
you have
deck.
to separate it. They have to be separate, and the longer you continue to allow the for-profit to control the financial destiny of the nonprofit, you're going to be, thicker in the mud as you go along. You have to at some point separate it and let it stand on its own, because I heard you say that was the purpose for it, because you do so much and you see the need or the impact. It's something that you feel passionate about, but that doesn't mean that you have to operate a nonprofit because this is something that you're passionate about, right? It's the realization that the successful nonprofits that exist are real life companies
Yeah.
with real life employees
Operating
and
on
real
their own budgets and
yeah,
their-
and that's the reality of it. It's not a feel good thing, it's a company.
How are we
So.
looking on time?
I was just going to ask that.
Okay, great.
Any
Anybody
other-
else?
Any other questions?
Ebony.
So because we have a for-profit and we're trying to make this slide into a nonprofit, and it's hard, it's time intensive, how would you start with the impact? Like, would you recommend using your financials, whatever little or big it may be, to do administrative or marketing, or is that not as important and jump straight into maybe like a small impact project? What's the best use?
I would say, and this because I know you, but starting with like one impact project a year for that nonprofit, so that you have a case study to build around, to say I put this many funds into this one thing and these are the outcomes. I'm looking to grow this, and then I would go into the marketing cycle of finding board members, finding people to partner with, funders, that whole thing, but having a proof of concept that you know what you're trying to do and that you had the means to start it and get it going, but you need buy-in to continue it. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I would almost turn like my beginning project into a crowdfunding campaign. One, it builds great brand awareness, right? The more people that are sharing it, the more people are seeing what you're doing. Two, it also generates funding and income.
Yeah.
And when you're going to ask funders and donors for money, you can show them like, hey, I have 350 people in the community that are supporting this effort, and they're saying that this effort is important. I need you to also join in, because together as a community, we will nickel and dime, but we'll get there. It'll just take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But we need a bigger support and a bigger back. So to Raina's point, I would start small, start biting at what that is, and going back to whoever I told earlier, you need to know the cost of that. What is it going to cost you to do this impact project? And then you start going out to seek the money to do it. And the best thing that we could have done, to Raina's point, was we brought people along every single journey we did. We raised like $50,000 in the pandemic on
When
Instagram.
everybody was at home.
On Instagram. And it was literally because we built a crowdfunding campaign, and we're like, we need your help.
You told
These
the
funders
story.
aren't doing it. It's important. Here's how you can be a part of it.
It's marketing though.
It
Right?
is.
That's a marketing play
Cross-sector.
It is.
that people are funding into things that they don't even know these young ladies, and they're just fulfilling them. They attach with the mission. You know.
Did I answer your question?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Anyone else? Because we're running out of time.
Out of time.
Braff.
Currents.
Currents
Currents
by
magazine.
Baton Rouge.
I actually was on the
Area
cover.
Foundation.
You know,
Okay.
we're asking. I actually was on the cover several years ago. Currents magazine.
Yeah.
Currents with the
like
S.
water
Yeah, Currents.
by Baton Rouge
Yeah.
Area Foundation, BREW.
Yeah, they got a handsome young man.
Okay,
about
that was
5 or
years
6.
ago.
Few grays
He's
was there.
reliving
you know,
his past,
hair was
his
a little
golden
thicker.
days.
Yeah, good old times. You know.
I will skip ahead to we were going to go through some myths, but this is Power Pump Girls info. If you want to connect with us, if you have any other questions after this, you can contact us there, and then Project 70805.
We did that for you, Jason.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.